Today, we're going to dive into the mystery of unanswered prayers and the time I prayed for someone's healing, but they ended up getting a stroke. I'm Richard Toussaint, and I've been in ministry for over 20 years. And over the years, I've seen people, including myself, wrestle with the silence of unanswered prayers. Now, what I want to do for you today is what the Lord has allowed me to do for countless of people, which is to help you grow into a deeper relationship with Jesus Christ. So let's take a closer look at why prayers sometimes feel unheard and what we can learn from it. Unanswered does not mean unheard. One of the hardest parts of faith is the feeling of unanswered prayer. Now, you might find yourself pouring your heart out to God, sharing your hopes, fears, and dreams, yet feel like the heavens are silent. Now, it is a struggle that many believers face, a sense of abandonment or confusion that leaves you asking, why isn't God responding? The frustrations can be overwhelming, and sometimes it feels like our prayers just vanish into thin air. But remember, just because it's unanswered, it does not mean that it is unheard. In the Bible, in 1 Samuel chapter 1, we're introduced to this biblical character by the name of Hannah. And Hannah had an interesting thing she was going through. Hannah was praying for a child. And year after year, the Bible said that she continued to pray for this child, but her womb was closed by the Lord. That's a whole different topic. Now, even in that, she had a rival, and her rival was the woman that her husband was married to. Let me explain. So, of course, in antiquity, it was common practice for a man to have multiple wives. The woman that he was married to had several children, and because Hannah's womb was closed, the woman would provoke Hannah and say that she was basically less than because she was unable to produce a child for her husband. Now, as you can imagine what this could have done to her faith. Now, Oswald Chambers had a quote that says this: faith must be tested because it can only become your intimate possession through conflict. Ooh, talk about it, Oswald. So this woman was facing two types of conflict, internal and external. Let's talk about this some more. The internal conflict was she was struggling with a deep desire to provide a child for her husband, a role that culture tied to her identity and value as a woman. The external conflict was she was enduring the pain of being taunted by another woman who had multiple children, who, if we can be honest, was fulfilling the very role that Hannah longed to fulfill for her husband. You see, she was praying in her heart. Her lips were moving, but her voice was not being heard. And Eli thought, who was a priest at that time, that she was drunk, and he rebuked her. So let's culminate and see what we have so far. Number one, you have an extended period of time to where it feels like your prayers are going unanswered. And then on top of that, you are being provoked by someone who has caused you to not only feel less than about yourself, but to the point to where there is utter crying and refusal to eat. And then the spiritual leaders with a voice from God, they're unable to discern some of the situations. And now she's being rebuked and being called drunk. Well, let me give you the long story short of this chapter. Hannah makes a vow to God. Hannah has a child by the name of Samuel. And Samuel comes along and turns out to be one of the most important biblical figures in the Old Testament. And can you guess what Samuel means? Yes, heard by God. So just because your prayers are unanswered, it doesn't mean that they're unheard. And here is what Hannah, I believe, would want to teach you. In Psalm 27:14, the Bible says, wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. Now, this verse reminds us to have courage and patience as we wait on God, even when we can't feel his presence or hear his voice. Whoo! Feel like I'm preaching, but I'm not. If this has been helpful to you in any kind of a way, this is a point of video where I would like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and if you're really feeling daring, share this to a friend who may have some unanswered prayers, but you know that just because they're unanswered, it doesn't mean they're unheard. Let's talk about a time I prayed for someone's healing, but they got a stroke. And that someone was actually my mother. She had diabetes. And we decided, and by we, my father, my brother, and everyone in my family decided to take action on her health. And we wanted a healing to occur, whether naturally or supernaturally. So we worked on her health, her fitness, and her mindset around food. We created habits that would help her live a better life. Meanwhile, we were praying. We were praying to God to heal her through divine intervention or through medical help. And a year into praying, something unimaginable happened. Remember it like it was yesterday. My mom received a massive stroke. Not one, but two. In fact, I was with my wife when we received the phone call. And my dad is a man, he's a strong man, not easily moved by anything. But that day I heard a tremble in his voice. And he says, "Your mom is in a hospital. She had a stroke." I rushed to the hospital and I was hesitant to walk through the door. But what I do remember is when I peeked in, I saw a window, and the window illuminated all of the tubes that were going inside of my mother. And in that moment, I wanted to pray. As a matter of fact, I started to pray. But the prayers felt like they were being unanswered, because day after day I looked at my mother and she was in this form that I'm not used to seeing her. The life and the laughter that would fill the room when my mother was healthy was no longer there, but she was just laying there. And I remember being in the hospital room struggling to understand why this was happening, especially to a devout woman of God. And I held her hand, and every single day, man, we would pray for my mother. And the Lord had to remind me of something, that faith is not belief without proof, but trust without reservation. That was by Elton Trueblood. And in that moment, I had to make a decision to trust God in the midst of my trials. Over the next few months, something remarkable unfolded. My mom regained full control of her faculties, and that experience changed the way my siblings and I approach our own health, both for ourselves and for our family. My mom also no longer has diabetes. Guess you can say that God answered our prayers, but he did it in a way I never expected. And sometimes his answers come through a journey we didn't plan. But looking back, I can see his hand in all of it. Maybe that's why Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31 says this, "But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up like wings, like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." This is the powerful promise to those who wait on the Lord, that they will find strength and endurance, even in times of silence. Psalm 62, 5-6 says, "Yes, my soul find rest in God. My hope comes from him. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken." So have you ever experienced a time when it felt like your prayers went unanswered? Man, please share your story in the comments below. And if you want to learn more about faith and finding peace in uncertain times, please subscribe to ensure you don't miss our next video in this series.